Jackson, what is this? I held up the envelope, my hand trembling slightly. The return address belonged to our family lawyer, but it was addressed only to my husband. Jackson looked up from his laptop, his expression a mix of annoyance and surprise. Olivia, have you been going through my mail? I ignored his accusation. Why is Mr. Hawkins sending you documents about our Boston house? The one my parents left us. He sighed, closing his laptop and leaning back in his chair. I was going to tell you about this, but I wanted to wait for the right moment. The right moment for what, exactly? I could feel my heart racing, a sense of dread creeping over me. Jackson stood up, walking towards me with that placating smile he always used when he thought I was overreacting. Look, Liv, it's not a big deal. Paige and Benjamin have been struggling to find a place of their own, and I thought You thought what? I interrupted, my voice rising. That you'd just give away our house without even discussing it with me? It's not giving away, it's helping family, Jackson said, his tone growing defensive. Besides, we hardly ever use that place. It's just sitting there, gathering dust. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That house held so many memories of my childhood, of my parents. That's not the point, Jackson. We're supposed to make these decisions together. We're partners, remember? He had the decency to look slightly ashamed, but it didn't last long. I know. But Paige is my sister, Olivia. She needs our help. And what about what I need? I asked, feeling a lump form in my throat. Did you even consider how I might feel about this? Before Jackson could respond, the doorbell rang. He looked relieved at the interruption. That must be Paige and Benjamin. They're coming over for dinner, remember? I stared at him in disbelief. You invited them over? Today of all days. I thought it would be a good opportunity to discuss everything, he said, heading towards the door. I stood there frozen, as I heard Paige's cheerful voice in the hallway. Olivia, there you are. She swept into the room, pulling me into a hug I didn't return. I'm so excited about our little house swap idea. I pulled away, looking from Paige's beaming face to Jackson's carefully neutral expression. House swap, I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Benjamin, always more perceptive than his wife, seemed to sense the tension. Maybe we should give you two a moment, he suggested, placing a hand on Paige's arm. But Paige was oblivious. Oh, don't be silly. We're all family here. Olivia, you're going to love the plans we have for the place. I was thinking we could knock down that old oak tree in the backyard. You know, the one with the tree house? It'll give us so much more space for a pool. I felt like I couldn't breathe. That tree house was where I'd spent countless hours as a child, where my father had taught me to stargaze, where I'd had my first kiss. Paige, Jackson said warningly, but it was too late. You can't, I said, my voice stronger now, fueled by anger and hurt. You can't have the house, and you certainly can't touch that tree. The room fell silent. Paige's smile faltered, and she looked to her brother for support. Jackson stepped forward, his face set in that determined expression I knew all too well. Olivia, let's be reasonable about this, he began, but I cut him off. Reasonable? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You went behind my back to give away my family home, and you want me to be reasonable? I turned, grabbing my keys from the side table. I need some air, I said, heading for the door. As I stepped outside, I could hear Jackson making excuses to Paige and Benjamin. Sitting in my car, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing thoughts. One thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. And as I pulled out of the driveway, leaving my bewildered husband and his sister behind, I knew I had a decision to make. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about respect, trust, and the future of my marriage. I hadn't spoken to Jackson for 3 days after the disastrous dinner. He'd tried to apologize, but his words rang hollow. Now, as I pulled into our driveway after a long day at work, I saw Paige's car parked out front. My stomach clenched. Taking a deep breath, I walked into my own home feeling like an intruder. Laughter drifted from the kitchen, stopping abruptly as I entered. Olivia! Paige's voice was overly cheerful. We were just talking about you. Jackson at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Hey, Liv. I thought you'd be working late tonight. Clearly, I said, setting down my bag. What's going on here? Paige jumped in before Jackson could respond. Oh, I was just showing Jackson some ideas for redecorating the Boston house. I know you're not ready to talk about it yet, but I thought a little brainstorming couldn't hurt. I felt my blood pressure rising. Paige, that's not your house to redecorate. Now, Olivia, Jackson started, using that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. Let's not get worked up. Paige is just excited about the possibility. The possibility of taking my family home? I interrupted. The home my parents left to us, Jackson. Not just you, us. Paige's smile faltered. I didn't mean to upset you, Olivia. It's just, well, you and Jackson have so much. This beautiful house, your successful careers. Benjamin and I are struggling to even find a decent apartment. I hoped you might understand. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I caught the glint in her eye, the slight curl of her lip. This wasn't about need. It was about want. I understand perfectly, I said, my voice cold. You want what isn't yours, and my husband is all too happy to give it to you. Jackson stood up, his face flushed with anger. That's enough, Olivia. Paige's family. She needs our help, and I won't have you speaking to her like this in our home. Our home. I laughed bitterly. Funny, I thought that concept only applied when it suited you. Paige stood up, grabbing her purse. I should go. I didn't mean to cause trouble. But as she walked past me, she paused, her voice low. You know, Olivia, not everything is about you. Sometimes you have to think about what's best for the family. I watched her leave, stunned by her audacity. As the front door closed, I turned to Jackson. How long has this been going on? These little planning sessions behind my back. He had the grace to look ashamed. It's not like that, Liv. I was just trying to find a solution that works for everyone. Everyone except me, you mean? I said, feeling tears prick at my eyes. That house is all I have left of my parents, Jackson. How could you even consider giving it away? It's just a house, Olivia, he exploded. Bricks and mortar. Is it really worth tearing our family apart over? His words hit me like a physical blow. Our family, I whispered. Or yours. The silence that followed was deafening. Jackson opened his mouth, then closed it again, seemingly at a loss for words. I turned away, unable to look at him anymore. I'm going to stay with Diane for a few days. I need some time to think. As I packed a bag, my hands shaking, I could hear Jackson on the phone in the other room. Paige. Yeah, it didn't go well. No, don't worry. I'll handle Olivia. We'll figure this out. In that moment, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about respect, about loyalty, about the very foundation of my marriage. And as I walked out the door, leaving Jackson staring after me, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going down without a fight. I'd been staying at Diane's for a week when Jackson finally called. His voice was a mixture of frustration and feigned concern. Olivia, this has gone on long enough. When are you coming home? I sighed, looking out Diane's kitchen window. I don't know, Jackson. Have you reconsidered giving away our house? Our house? Liv, we barely use it. Paige and Benjamin dash. Stop. I cut him off. I'm not having this conversation again. Not over the phone. There was a pause, then fine. Let's talk face to face. Dinner tonight. I agreed, if only to put an end to this limbo we'd been living in. As I hung up, Diane entered the kitchen, her face etched with worry. Everything all right, dear? I managed a weak smile. Jackson wants to meet for dinner. To talk things out. Diane patted my hand. Remember, stand your ground. That house is as much yours as it is his. Her words bolstered my resolve. That evening, I walked into the restaurant with my head held high. Jackson was already seated, looking annoyingly handsome in his business suit. You look well, he said as I sat down. Let's skip the pleasantries, Jackson. Why am I here? He leaned forward, his voice low. I want you to come home, Liv. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. Has it? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Or are you just realizing that I won't roll over and let you and Paige have your way? Jackson's jaw clenched. This isn't about Paige. It's about us, our marriage. Is it? I challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're choosing your sister over your wife. Before he could respond, a familiar voice cut through the tension. Jackson? Olivia? What a surprise. I looked up to see Paige and Benjamin approaching our table. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a coincidence. Paige, I said, my voice cold. What are you doing here? She smiled, all innocence. Oh, Benjamin and I were just having dinner. What a lovely surprise to run into you both. Jackson stood, pulling out chairs for them. Why don't you join us? I stared at him in disbelief. You planned this, didn't you? Olivia, he started, but I was already gathering my things. No, Jackson. I won't sit here and be ambushed. Paige reached out, grabbing my arm. Please, Olivia. We're family. Can't we just talk about this? I yanked my arm away. Family? Is that what you call going behind my back, trying to take what isn't yours? Benjamin, usually so quiet, spoke up. Now, wait a minute. Paige isn't trying to take anything. We're just dash. Just what? I interrupted. Just hoping I'll give up my family home because you two can't afford your own? Well, here's a novel idea. Why don't you work for it, like the rest of us? The restaurant had gone quiet, other diners watching our drama unfold. Jackson stood, his face red with anger and embarrassment. Olivia, that's enough. You're making a scene. I laughed, a bitter sound. I'm making a scene? You're the one who arranged this little ambush. Well, congratulations, Jackson. You've succeeded in pushing me further away. As I turned to leave, Paige called out, This isn't over, Olivia. That house will be ours, one way or another. I spun back, my voice low and dangerous. Is that a threat, Paige? Jackson stepped between us. Both of you, stop it. This isn't helping anyone. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. You're right, it isn't. Which is why I'm done talking. I'll be by the house tomorrow to pick up more of my things. And Jackson? I'll be contacting a lawyer about that house. My house. As I walked out, leaving stunned silence in my wake, I felt a strange mix of despair and determination. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a fight I never wanted, but one I was now prepared to win. The next morning, I drove to our house, my house, with a knot in my stomach. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Paige's car parked out front. Of course she was here. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself and walked in. The sound of laughter from the kitchen stopped me in my tracks. I recognized Paige's voice along with Jackson's and, was that Benjamin? Curiosity overrode my anger, and I crept closer, staying out of sight. I can't believe how easy this is going to be, Paige was saying. Once we get that old house, we'll flip it and make a fortune. My blood ran cold. Flip it? They were planning to sell my family home? Jackson's voice chimed in. Now, Paige, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We still need to convince Olivia. Oh, please, Paige scoffed. She'll come around. And if she doesn't, well, there are other ways to get what we want. Benjamin's usually calm voice had an edge to it. What do you mean by that, Paige? I'm just saying if push comes to shove, we have options. That house has been in her family for generations. I'm sure there are some skeletons in the closet we could use as leverage. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Blackmail? Was Paige really suggesting they blackmail me? Jackson's response chilled me to the bone. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But if it does, well, family has to stick together, right? I'd heard enough. Backing away quietly, I made it to the front door before my presence was discovered. Once outside, I leaned against my car, trying to catch my breath. The betrayal cut deep, but more than that, I was scared. What did Paige think she had on my family? My phone buzzed, a text from Diane. How's it going, dear? Do you need backup? I typed back quickly. Meet me at the cafe in 20. It's worse than we thought. As I drove to meet Diane, my mind raced. I needed a plan and fast. This wasn't just about keeping my house anymore. It was about protecting my family's legacy and my own future. Diane was already waiting when I arrived, her face creased with concern. "Olivia, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." I collapsed into the chair across from her, my voice shaky as I recounted what I'd overheard. Diane's expression darkened with each word. "Those conniving little," she muttered, then caught herself. "Sorry, dear, but this is serious. Have you considered talking to James? As a lawyer, he might have some insights." I nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. "That's not a bad idea. But Diane, what if Paige really does have something on my family? What if—" "Stop right there," Diane interrupted, her voice firm. "Don't let them get in your head. That's exactly what they want." She was right, of course. I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. "You're right. I need to stay focused. But what do I do now? I can't go back to that house, not with them there." Diane reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You'll stay with me as long as you need to. And we'll figure this out together." As we sat there, planning our next move, a thought struck me. "Diane," I said slowly, "what if we turned the tables on them? What if, instead of waiting for their next move, we made one of our own?" Diane's eyes sparkled with interest. "What did you have in mind?" I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Well, if Paige wants to play dirty, maybe it's time we dug up some dirt of our own. And I think I know just where to start." As I outlined my plan, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This wasn't like me plotting and scheming. But then again, I never thought I'd be fighting my own husband for my family home. As Diane nodded along, her expression a mix of concern and approval, I realized there was no turning back now. The gloves were off and I was ready to fight. I sat in Diane's living room, my hands shaking as I held the envelope James had just delivered. Inside was the information we'd been digging for. The dirt on Paige that could potentially turn the tables in my favor. "Are you sure you want to do this, Olivia?" Diane asked, her voice laced with concern. I took a deep breath. "I don't want to, but I don't see any other choice." Just then my phone buzzed. It was Jackson. "We need to talk. Come home. Now." The tone of his message sent a chill down my spine. I showed it to Diane, who frowned. "Be careful, dear. And remember, you have the upper hand now." With a nod, I gathered my things and headed out. The drive home felt like a journey to the gallows. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw not only Jackson's car but Paige's as well. My stomach churned. This was it, the confrontation I'd been dreading. I walked in to find them all in the living room. Jackson, Paige, and even Benjamin. Their faces were a mix of anger and something else, triumph. "Sit down, Olivia," Jackson said, his voice cold. "We need to discuss the future of our family home." I remained standing. "Our home, Jackson. Mine and yours. Not Paige's." Paige stood up, a smirk playing on her lips. "Actually, Olivia, that's not entirely true anymore." My heart raced. "What are you talking about?" Jackson pulled out a stack of papers. "I've had our lawyer draw up the transfer documents. The house will be signed over to Paige and Benjamin tomorrow." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "You can't do that. I won't sign anything." "You don't have to," Paige said, her voice sickeningly sweet. "You see, we found some interesting information about your family's past. Let's just say if certain things came to light, it could be very uncomfortable for you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were actually going through with the blackmail. What could you possibly have that would make me give up my family home? I challenged, my voice stronger than I felt. Jackson stepped forward, his face a mask of determination. "Olivia, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Sign the papers or we'll have no choice but to reveal what we know." I looked at each of them in turn. Jackson, my husband, now a stranger. Paige, her eyes gleaming with victory, and Benjamin looking uncomfortable but not intervening. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope James had given me. "Before you go any further," I said, my voice steady, You might want to take a look at this. I tossed the envelope onto the coffee table. Paige's smirk faltered as she reached for it. What is this? She demanded. Open it and see, I replied, crossing my arms. As Paige read the contents, her face drained of color. Jackson snatched the papers from her, his eyes widening as he scanned them. Where did you get this? He stammered. I stood tall, feeling a surge of confidence. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I have it. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tear up those transfer papers, and we're going to have a very different conversation about the future of our family. The room fell silent. I could see the wheels turning in their heads, realizing their plan had backfired spectacularly. Finally, Jackson spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Olivia, we can talk about this. Surely we can come to some sort of agreement. I looked at my husband, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in our marriage. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. You're right, Jackson. We do need to talk. But not about the house. About divorce. The silence that followed was deafening. As I turned to leave the room, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I might just win the war. The word divorce hung in the air like a thundercloud, heavy and ominous. Jackson's face paled, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I once loved. Olivia, please. He started, but I held up my hand. I'm done talking for now, Jackson. I'll be in touch through my lawyer. As I turned to leave, Paige's voice, shrill and panicked, cut through the tension. You can't do this. We had a deal. I spun back, fixing her with a cold stare. No, Paige. You and Jackson had a deal. I'm making my own choices now. The drive back to Diane's was a blur. My mind raced with possibilities, fears, and a strange sense of exhilaration. When I arrived, Diane and James were waiting, concern etched on their faces. How did it go? Diane asked, ushering me inside. I collapsed onto her couch, suddenly exhausted. I told Jackson I want a divorce. James leaned forward, his lawyer instincts kicking in. Olivia, we need to move fast. If we're going to protect your assets, especially the Boston house, we need to act now. I nodded, a plan forming in my mind. What if I agreed to move out of the house? As a peace offering. Diane looked confused. But dear, isn't that what they want? Yes, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. That's exactly what they want. And that's why they won't see what's coming next. Over the next few days, I played the part of the defeated wife perfectly. I agreed to move out, even helped Paige start packing up some of my things. All the while, James worked behind the scenes, preparing the legal groundwork for what was to come. A week later, I stood in the driveway of my Boston home, watching as Jackson and Paige gleefully carried boxes inside. Benjamin hung back, looking uncomfortable as always. I hope you'll be happy here, I said, my voice carefully neutral. Paige beamed, her victory seemingly complete. Oh, we will be. Don't worry, Olivia. We'll take good care of the place. As they disappeared inside, I pulled out my phone and dialed James. It's time, I said simply. The next morning, I woke early and drove to a nearby coffee shop. As I sipped my latte, my phone buzzed incessantly. Jackson's name flashed on the screen, along with a flurry of text messages. What have you done? Olivia, answer your phone. You can't do this. I smiled, imagining the scene unfolding at the house. By now, they would have received the notice. The Boston house was scheduled for demolition, effective immediately. Just then, Paige's car screeched into the parking lot. She stormed into the coffee shop, her face a mask of fury. You evil, conniving witch! She screamed, drawing stares from other patrons. How could you do this? That house was supposed to be ours. I stood slowly, facing her with a calmness I didn't entirely feel. No, Paige. That house was mine, left to me by my parents, and I have every right to do with it as I please. But the memories, the history, she sputtered. My memories, my history, I corrected her. Not yours. Never yours. As security approached to escort the hysterical Paige out, I felt a twinge of guilt. Was I going too far? Destroying a house to prove a point? But then I remembered the weeks of manipulation, the betrayal, the utter disregard for my feelings. My resolve hardened. As I walked out of the coffee shop, my phone buzzed again. This time it was James. "It's done," he said simply. "The demolition crew just arrived." "Are you sure about this, Olivia?" I took a deep breath, watching as Paige sped away, likely racing back to the house in a futile attempt to stop what was already in motion. "I'm sure," I said, my voice steady. "It's time to build something new, on my own terms." As I hung up, I felt a mix of sadness and liberation. The house that held so many memories would soon be gone, but in its place I hoped would rise something stronger. A new life built on my own strength and resilience. The sound of heavy machinery filled the air as I stood across the street from my childhood home. Dust billowed around the property, obscuring the view of the demolition crew at work. My heart raced, a mix of exhilaration and grief coursing through me. Suddenly, a car screeched to a halt beside me. Jackson leaped out, his face contorted with rage. "Olivia, what have you done?" he shouted, grabbing my arm. "Stop this madness right now." I wrenched my arm free, standing my ground. "It's too late, Jackson. The demolition is already underway." His eyes widened in disbelief. "You're destroying our home? Our memories?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm reclaiming what's mine. This house, these memories, they belong to me. You and Paige made that clear when you tried to take them away." As if on cue, Paige's car pulled up. She stumbled out, tears streaming down her face. "How could you?" she wailed. "We were going to build a life here." I turned to face her, my voice steady. "You were going to build your life on the ruins of mine. I couldn't let that happen." Benjamin emerged from the passenger side, his usual laid-back demeanor replaced by shock. "This is insane," he muttered, shaking his head. The four of us stood there, watching as the house that had been the center of our conflict began to crumble. Each crash of the wrecking ball felt like a punctuation mark on the end of a chapter in my life. Jackson made a move towards the construction site, but I stepped in front of him. "Don't," I warned. "It's all legal." James made sure of that. His face darkened at the mention of James. "So that's it? You're choosing strangers over your own family." I laughed bitterly. "Family? Is that what you call this, Jackson? Betraying your wife, conspiring with your sister to take away something precious to me." Paige stepped forward, her voice shrill. "We had no choice. You wouldn't listen to reason." "Reason?" I scoffed. "Was it reasonable to try and blackmail me? To threaten me with secrets you thought you had?" Benjamin's head snapped up at this. "Blackmail? Paige, what is she talking about?" Paige faltered, her righteous anger deflating. It wasn't like that, Ben." As the truth began to unravel, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The house behind us continued to fall, but I stood taller with each passing moment. Jackson made one last desperate attempt. "Olivia, please. We can still fix this. We can rebuild Dash." "No, Jackson." I cut him off. "We can't. Some things, once broken, can't be put back together." Just then my phone buzzed. It was a message from James. "Demolition complete. Next steps ready when you are." I took a deep breath, looking each of them in the eye. "This is goodbye. I hope you all find what you're looking for, but it won't be here. And it won't be with me." As I turned to walk away, Paige called out, her voice breaking. "Where will you go? What will you do?" I paused, looking back at the pile of rubble that was once my family home. "I'm going to build something new. Something that's truly mine." With those words, I walked away, leaving behind the dust of my old life. My heart pounded with a mixture of fear and excitement for the unknown future ahead. As I reached my car, I caught sight of Diane waiting nearby, a supportive smile on her face. "Ready for the next chapter, dear?" she asked gently. I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "More than ready," I replied, my voice strong and clear. As we drove away, I watched in the rearview mirror as Jackson, Paige, and Benjamin grew smaller, standing amidst the ruins of their failed plans. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in months, I felt truly free. 6 months after the demolition, I stood in the courtroom, facing Jackson for the last time. The divorce proceedings had been long and bitter, but today was the final hearing. As the judge entered, I felt a strange calm wash over me. In the matter of Olivia versus Jackson, the judge began, I've reviewed all the evidence and testimonies presented. Mrs. Olivia, please step forward. I approached the bench, my heart steady. This was the moment of truth. Mrs. Olivia, you've been accused of malicious destruction of property. How do you plead? I took a deep breath. Not guilty, Your Honor. The house was my individual property, left to me by my parents. I had every legal right to do with it as I saw fit. Jackson's lawyer jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. The house was marital property. The judge raised her hand. Overruled. I've reviewed the documents provided by Mrs. Olivia's lawyer. The house was indeed her separate property, inherited before the marriage and never commingled with marital assets. I could hear Jackson's sharp intake of breath behind me. The judge continued, furthermore, the attempted transfer of the property to Mrs. Paige without Mrs. Olivia's consent was illegal and constitutes attempted fraud. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. I turned to see Paige sitting in the gallery, her face pale with shock. Order! The judge's gavel came down hard. In light of these facts, I'm dismissing all charges against Mrs. Olivia. Furthermore, Mr. Jackson and Mrs. Paige will be investigated for attempted fraud and blackmail. As the judge's words sank in, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. I had won. Outside the courthouse, Diane and James were waiting for me. Diane pulled me into a tight hug. You did it, dear. I'm so proud of you. James smiled, shaking my hand. Congratulations, Olivia. Justice was served today. As we walked down the steps, I heard Jackson calling my name. I turned to see him approaching, his face a mix of anger and desperation. Olivia, please. Can't we talk about this? I know I made mistakes, but dash. I held up my hand, stopping him mid-sentence. No, Jackson. We're done talking. We're done with everything. Paige appeared behind him, her eyes red from crying. Olivia, I'm so sorry. I never meant for things to go this far. I looked at them both, feeling a strange mix of pity and relief. I hope you both find peace, I said softly. But it won't be with me, and it won't be in my family's home. As I turned to leave, Jackson called out one last time. What will you do now? I paused, looking back at him. I'm going to build something new. Something that's truly mine. Weeks later, I stood on the empty lot where my childhood home once stood. The land had been cleared, ready for a fresh start. Diane stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder. Have you decided what you're going to do with the property? She asked. I nodded, smiling. I'm donating it to the city. They're going to build a community center here. A place where families can come together, where children can learn and grow. Diane squeezed my shoulder. Your parents would be proud, Olivia. As we stood there, looking out over the empty lot full of possibilities, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The house was gone, but the memories remained. And now, those memories would be joined by new ones, created by countless families who would benefit from this space. You know, I said, turning to Diane, for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the future. She smiled warmly. As you should be, dear. You've turned destruction into creation, pain into purpose. That's a rare and beautiful thing. As we walked away from the lot, I felt lighter with each step. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I was ready to face it. I had learned the hard way that sometimes you have to tear things down to build something better. And that's exactly what I intended to do. Not just with this property, but with my life. The sun was setting as we reached my car, casting a golden glow over everything. It felt like a sign, a promise of brighter days ahead. And for the first time in months, I smiled. A real, genuine smile that reached my eyes and warmed my heart. The future was mine to build, and I couldn't wait to get started.